Okay, guys, I am coming at you with a recipe or a dish that might sound a little strange. I want to show you how to make the best Southern style hash recipe for two. And the reason that it's specifically designed for two people is because my recipe is a family favorite that we used leftovers to make. So, you, of course, could double or triple this recipe and make it a bigger meal for 4, 6, 8 people, 10 people, so forth and so on. Now, I know the name hash doesn't sound very appetizing, right? But that couldn't be farther from the truth. It's a very true meat and taters kind of dish, and it brings back so many childhood memories for me. And no matter what anyone else has told you, or no matter what preconceived idea you have, I am telling you that this is the best Southern style hash recipe that you've ever eaten. My mamaw's original recipe uses leftover pot roast or deer steak and cooks that down with fried potatoes and onions. You can top it with thick brown gravy or some ketchup, and you have got yourself the perfect Southern meal. So the first thing I did was peel 3 russet potatoes, and then I'm just going to cut them into bite-sized pieces, I guess you would call it. I basically half the russet potato, then I half the 2 halves, and then I turn it sideways and I cut like this until they're all about the same size. The reason that you want them to be all about the same size is strictly for cooking purposes. You want this hash to be done, or you want all the potatoes to be done around the same time, because you don't want a large piece that's still crunchy and then have another piece of potato that's literally falling apart. So after I do that, I'm going to take a medium yellow onion, and we're only going to use half of it. But I like to slice it into really thin slices and then separate those slices to lay on top of my potatoes in the cast iron skillet. So I'm going to show you that here in just a second. I just had my avocado oil heating up in a cast iron skillet over about medium to medium high heat. I wanted to wait until it was hot before I added my potatoes because we're trying to get a nice sear. You can see that it's bubbling around the edges. Then I take the slices of onion and I'm just going to lay them on top. There's really not much of a reason at this point to incorporate them because I really want to develop a crust on those potatoes. That is what is so special about this dish. It's the texture, which is why to me it's incredibly important to use a cast iron skillet, because it's going to sear the skin of that potato or the flesh of that potato and make it very crunchy. Or I guess I should really say crispy, not crunchy. Then I'm going to add my seasoned salt. I like to use Tony's, and I also like to add some pepper. I didn't give a measurement for the seasonings because everyone's taste is different, but I can tell you that potatoes need a good amount of salt. So you can always add some more later once you taste the dish. Now I've let the potatoes sit on the bottom of that skillet for a minute cooking while I cleaned up everything. And now I'm doing my first stir or my first turn of those potatoes, and the onion is getting incorporated. And then I pressed it down so that everything's touching the bottom of the skillet again. And I went over here to pull out my leftover deer steak. Now I'm using leftover deer steak because I cook deer steak in gravy, and I cook it in my Instapot or my slow cooker all day, just like I would a pot roast. So right here, I'm just separating the meat. Both of those types of meats are perfect for this dish. So if you make a roast and you have leftover roast, that's always what my grandmother used to use. And so after I get that separated and kind of shredded, I'm going to go and turn my potatoes again. I wanted to show you those crispy bits that are starting to develop. And so I am turning everything over, trying to make sure that every potato gets a chance to touch the bottom of that skillet. And then I'm using my spatula to just push it down again in a single layer. You can see right there at the bottom of the screen, there's a crispy bit of potato that I'm talking about and that I'm so excited for you to taste. Of course, I always have a little bit of time in between these sessions of turning, and then I decided I needed to add about a half a cup of water to a cup of water. Now this creates steam, and that helps our potatoes cook more evenly, and I put a lid on there to trap that steam because I don't want them to get super crispy and brown but not be completely cooked through in the center. That is not the goal, because sometimes with your skillet you can practically get it burned, or you can get the crispy outside but then your potato is not quite done. The water will help with that. After I did another turn and pressed it flat, Then it was time for me to add my meat. Again, I just sat it on top because I'm going to stir it in a minute, and I'm going to let it incorporate and get warmed through because it's already cooked. Now, I don't add my meat until I'm close to the end of my turning and flipping. I'm only going to turn this and mix this about 2 more times because I do want the meat to be warmed completely through. But you can see here that on my cast iron skillet, the potatoes were sticking to the bottom. That's okay. I went and grabbed a wooden spoon to help me because the rubber spatula just wasn't working, and I was able to scrape up those delicious brown bits and crispy pieces of potato. Guys, you have got to make this dish. It is so simple. It is amazing. You got to make it.